Hi everyone, this is Pug Weasel, otherwise known as Brad the Black Guy from the Black Guy White Guy show, or Brad Hollowell. Today I wanted to do a video on gun safety. As a gun owner, and I believe that two things that you definitely have to be on top of. One is top one is safety, and the second one is, as you may have seen, I did a short video on a first aid kit that I put together, because I believe if you're going to have a gun, you're going to go to the range, especially if you're going to go shoot out on your family's land, your own land, friend's land, you need to have a first aid kit with you. And so I did a video on that. But I actually put together a table of contents because there's a bunch of stuff I want to get to in this video and I don't want to forget anything. But let me just tell you what we're going to cover today. We're going to start with NRA rules. We're going to go to target practice on private property. We're going to cover, is your brain the best safety? You'll hear that a lot in videos on YouTube. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about redundancy instead of memory as the best way to be safe. And then we're going to talk about safety at home, including gun safes, gun locks, using hollow points, premium priced bullets, hollow points, and your children, and then drilling at home for worst case scenarios. But let's get started with NRA rules so that we can just kind of have our starting point. And a lot of these rules are for, you may recognize from, if you've gone to the range, a lot of indoor ranges use these rules as their rules for the range. And that's partially because the NRA insures a great many of the ranges, and so they insist on these rules. Okay, so let me just run through them really quick. Always keep the gun pointed in a safe direction. Number 2, always keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot. Number 3, always keep the gun unloaded until ready to use. Know your target and what's beyond it. That's an important one, the one that's about what's beyond it. Know how to use the gun safely. Be sure the gun is safe to operate. Only use the correct ammunition for your gun. Wear eye and ear protection as appropriate. In other words, when you're practicing, you should have eye and ear protection on. Never use alcohol or over-the-counter prescription or other drugs before or while shooting. Store guns so that they cannot be accessible by unauthorized persons, and that's strangers in your house, friends that may come over, as well as your children. Be aware that certain types of guns and many shooting activities require additional safety precautions. And then cleaning. And basically, they're just warning you that you should clean your gun an appropriate amount of time. If you're like me and you don't go every week or so, you need to clean your gun after every use. If you're someone who goes to the range every day or even every week, you might clean it not after every use, but every week or something of that nature. Okay, I do have my pistol here. It's a PX4 Storm. I can zoom in so you can see that it is empty. Nothing in no magazine, and okay. But we won't be using a lot of it. We won't be using it very much at all, except to, when I'm making a point about one specific thing. Moving on in our table of contents, though, target practice on private property. When you go to the range, whether it's indoor or outdoor, and it's an established or a business of someone's, they usually, again, may be using the National Rifle Association's rules, or they may have their own set of rules. But what if you just go out to someone's farm? I have a friend and he lets me come out and shoot at his farm, and so we've established, myself and friends of ours that come out at the same time, we've kind of established certain things that we do as a courtesy to each other to be safe. So before someone starts shooting, someone will say, hey, I'm about to fire, so that everybody knows to put their headgear on, their ear mufflers, and so on and so forth. We basically shout out just about everything we're going to do. So if you're going up range to look at your target, you're going to shout that out, and you're going to look around specifically to make sure everyone's listening to you, to make sure that you have everyone's attention, because obviously when you have ear protection on, you don't always hear what someone's saying. So it's your responsibility before you go up range to make sure that everyone heard you and knows that you're going up range. And then you always have the guns pointed down towards the targets, or down range or up range, and then you never point the gun at anybody. We all have permission to correct each other, so that if we bring, say, someone new out there and someone, you know, for instance, forgets themselves and doesn't point that gun in the right direction, we all have just, you know, we're not going to get mad at each other because someone goes, hey, whoa, you need to point that gun in another direction, so on and so forth. So wherever you go ahead and at the beginning of that day, if it's people you're familiar with, then maybe when you go out there at some point in time, the next time you go out, establish some rules, establish some things you're going to do to make sure that you're all safe, because you need to do that, because someone will go, I didn't know. And when someone said, I don't know, it probably means that someone's shot close to you, or maybe has shot you, and or someone's been shot, and then it's too late, of course. All right, is your brain the best safety? True or false? If you watch a lot of videos on YouTube about guns, you'll hear this said a lot, that your brain is your best safety. And I say it's true, but not the way most people think. A lot of Glock owners, where there's no lever safety, will say, you know, your best safety is yourself. In other words, remember whether your gun is loaded or not loaded. Remember the things you need to remember so that you can be safe. The problem with that is that that's just not how the human brain works. The human brain is just made to forget things on occasion. It's just the way it is. And so the way your brain can be your best safety takes us right into the next topic, which is redundancy. In other words, the best way to make your brain your best safety is to engage in redundancy. So when you're at home cleaning your gun, every time you pick it up, you rack it, right? It'll tell you whether there's a bullet in it because it'll fly out. You look for the magazine and you rack it. You are not going to wear the spring out. So always do that, just every time you pick it up. So when I'm at my house and I have my gun out, whether it's because, you know, I'm cleaning it or I'm going to do some dry fire practice, every time I pick it up, unless I'm in the middle of that dry fire practice, every time I pick it up, I'm doing that. Just because then I know that I didn't forget that one in the chamber. And the fact is I may have forgotten it. Because when you engage in redundancy, even if you forget once, because you're doing it all the time, you are in fact going to catch it the second time. The other thing that I do when I'm at my house or even on the range to make sure that I'm safe is my finger does not go on the trigger. I make sure, I feel my finger's practically more comfortable here than it is inside of this trigger guard. And I'm not going to show you, this gun's empty, but I'm not going to pull the trigger, because I don't pull the trigger in my house unless I'm going through the process of dry firing and I put a snap cap or a dummy round in my pistol so that I don't make any mistakes and accidentally fire the pistol. And so that's just, again, redundancy. It never goes on there. It's always right there. Okay, so unless I'm doing some exercise to practice dry firing, my finger just doesn't go in and pull that trigger. And that's one of the reasons I like a decocker, because I can stick with that process. I'm not a big fan of guns that don't have a decocker. Although I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with them. You know, that's my practice. That may change because I feel like I'm becoming more of an experienced shooter. I'm not knocking people who don't have a decocker. You know, if you have that type of weapon, you may have gotten used to that. Whatever your process is to make sure that you do it right is what you need to do over and over again and stick to it. Redundancy. Safety at home. Okay. In this day and age, with technology the way it is and the way it's gotten so much less expensive than it's been in the past, there's no reason for you to not have a gun safe if you have children. I'm a single person. I don't have children in the house. I have a nephew I have come over every once in a while. I empty all the guns out while he's here and keep the ammunition in a separate place. That's what I do for safety. But I have friends with kids, they have gun safes. Specifically the biometric safe, where it uses your fingerprint to unlock. And they have some that are very quick. They are spring loaded. You can put your hand on it, it'll pop right open and you can get to your gun if you're in that situation where your life is in danger, or your family's life is in danger, and you can in fact practice with it so that you can get good with it and make sure that you're there for your family. Hollow points. If you're living in a house or an apartment, it is so important to get hollow points so that you don't have overpenetration, so that you don't kill a neighbor, so that you don't kill, you're in an apartment, you definitely have to be worried about your neighbors. Most of these apartments being built these days don't have anything on the outside. They may have insulation in them, but that's not really going to stop a bullet. And on the inside, they're not going to have anything. They're just going to have 2 pieces of drywall between you and your neighbor, and you could end up killing your neighbor if you're not careful. So hollow points are an important part of safety, so that you don't, again, shoot one of your kids when you're trying to shoot the bad guy. God forbid that would happen. Premium bullets. There's bullets out there. You need to do your research on them to figure out which one's best for you, as well as which ones work the best, because they do cost a bit of money, but they are worth it because they are made to make sure that they do what hollow points are supposed to do. They're tested more. They're higher quality in the context of mushrooming out and become a big, large, nickel size, if you will, depending on the size of the bullet, projectile that is more likely to stop when it hits something instead of going through someone or something and then going and hitting an unintended target. So you need to consider getting premium hollow points for your at-home or your carry pistol. Children. Children and gun safety is this. Do not assume that your children mind you so well that they don't want to find out what's so cool about that thing they're not allowed to touch. I think the NRA has already kind of discovered this. The best way to make your kids safe is to educate them just as soon as they're old enough to understand, so that they are not trying to find out what that mystical thing is that they're not allowed to touch, as I just said. Also, don't assume that if you just put it up high that if your kid's old enough to walk, they're old enough to climb, and they just might get into it. And putting it up high isn't necessarily going to be good enough, and you need to have a safe or have some sort of locking mechanism for your gun and have a system so that you can drill. Which brings us to our last point, drilling in your home. A lot of us sit around, we watch TV, we watch videos on YouTube, we have daydreamed about that horrible scenario happening, and we have saw in our mind how we think we're going to handle it. Well, your mind doesn't work that way, okay? Daydreaming about something, imagining something, does not make your brain act the way practicing it does physically. I have friends who have sat down with their wives and said, okay, here's the scenario. This is what you have to do to get the gun loaded so that you'll be ready in case there's an intruder here when I'm gone. And made their wives practice getting the gun out, getting the gun loaded, whatever it was that they needed to do in their scenario. I have a routine that I go through where I roll off the bed to grab the shotgun, and I practice getting that pointed towards the door, because I don't want to be in that situation where someone's kicked in my front door and I have seconds to get ready, but I just start freaking out, panicking, and I don't know what to do because I haven't practiced it. So I practice it. I don't practice as often as I should, so I'm not trying to talk down to anybody, but all of you should practice your scenarios. What are your weak links? The doors, the windows, on the bottom floor, and are you ready to protect from what angle? How are you going to get your kids to a safe place? Or are you going to go to where you can protect your kids from some place? Know what those things are. Know where your points of protection are so that you can do a good job of protecting your family. This is Pug Weasel, otherwise known as Brad the Black Guy from the Black Guy White Guy Show, and this has been a video on gun safety.